morning to introduce you to this amazing lady. I first saw her on 3ABN and I was so encapsulated with her wonderful program. I've watched it. I think I've probably watched every one you've done. And it's been my pleasure to follow her along the way and see how she's been able to minister to people by coming to our camp and coming to our conference. And when I saw her name on the piece of paper this year that said she was coming, I'm like, I'm in. Sign me up.
She did not say it that quietly, because she never says anything that quietly.
They know me.
All right. I'm just saying.
Well, welcome to our talk this morning, Cheri. Welcome to South New Zealand. Yeah. And we just sit here this morning and asking God's Spirit to be with you as He ministers to us through you.
Thank you. You know what's really interesting is there are times in my life that I get a message from her, like on Facebook or email or texting or something, and it's always where I need it the most. So I just want to thank you, because you always bless me. Always bless me. I've got to say, you know, they told me I'm supposed to say exactly what I said last night. I'm ADD, and that will never happen. You know, I'm a heroin addict in recovery. I've been in recovery for 30-something years, so a long time. And if any addicts out there, can I hear an amen on that? 30-something years. Are you kidding me? It's just ridiculously cool. I ended up jumping into recovery. I was excited. I had been strung out for 10 years. I had been living on the streets. I was fairly illiterate. I mean, all of that kind of stuff. I had teeth missing. I had gotten beaten up by some bikies and put on the block and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was a pretty intense life. And all of a sudden, I met a God who said, not only did He say He loved me, because I thought that I don't know if it would have worked with me. I think it would have been too cheesy. What He said is, I'm absolutely crazy about you. And I thought, you're crazy about me. I'm looking at myself. I have teeth missing. I'm strung out. I've been a drug dealer for years. My mom's a drug dealer. My sister has a porn site on the internet. My grandmother died in her alcoholism. I have an uncle that was so yellow because of his liver disease that I asked him, you know, why are you so yellow? And he said his mama was a duck. I'm like, well, I can't even imagine that, you know. But I mean, they were very funny, but very strung out. And I meet God, and He says, you know, I'm crazy about you. And I remember just being so frightened by that, because I thought, almost like if you knew me, you wouldn't be. You know, if you knew where I come from, if you knew who I really was. And so, you know, God, I think He really lets us go there for a while. But, I mean, he knit us together in the womb, it says. I mean, it's ridiculous how well He knows us. And so, you know, in the midst of meeting Him, He just says, can I give you a view of who you are? And I just was afraid. You know, what view is He going to give me? And He gave me, raise your hand if you're a Christian, if you have a Christian background. He gave me a vision, tiny little bits, of who I am the day after resurrection. The day after. Not the day after I pull a needle out of my arm. Do you know what I mean? Not when I start behaving. But who am I the day after resurrection? When all of this stuff is dealt with. When I'm not an abused kid or unloved kid. Or my dad died in a crack house. You know, so I'm not that kid. I'm not the kid that everybody didn't let their kids play with. You know, I'm not that kid the day after. The day after, it's unbelievable who I am. And I didn't see all of it. I saw a tiny glimpse. And I thought, if that's where we're going, I'll do whatever. I'll follow you everywhere, you know. And I remember getting up. I had just been threatened. A guy had a gun to my face, was going to blow my head off. And, I'm still breathing, which I was disappointed with. And I'm then meeting God. And I get this sense that not only am I loved, I'm safe for the first time in my life. And He sees me in a whole different way. So I get up and I follow Him. And for people that I just love Christians. I just think sometimes Christians are so funny. But so I have to call and I have to do recovery somewhere, right? And so I can't do, my friends are addicts and prostitutes and druggies, and my parents are drug addicts, and I can't go there. And so then I call around and I find this woman that is going to let me stay at her house. Let me see if I can get some kind of somebody in the group that just looks like her. She was 1,000 years old, and very healthy. Very, very healthy. And so I end up, she says I can stay at her house. I don't know why anybody would say that. We have a girl, she's really a mess, strung out on heroin, teeth missing, really, really struggling, has warrants for arrest, but she really needs a place to go for a little while. Can she come to your house? You know, I mean, what do they say? And so they end up, I end up driving to her house, which is hours. By the time I get to her house, I'm like having, should I have not brought any drugs with me? Is this crazy? Should I just brought at least some weed or something? Because I'm dying here. I am dying here. And I knock on the door, and this woman, this health nut, comes to the door, and she says, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here." And I'm like, don't mess with me right now, you know, because I'm withdrawing. Don't give me a Christian tract. Don't try to convert me. I'm not in the mood. I'm actually a little irritated, and I'm afraid of what I might say, you know. And she's like smiling. "I love you. You know, God bless you." And I'm like, so she brings me in, and she puts some Christian music on. 2 people harmonizing and singing a hymn. And I'm thinking, does anybody have a gun? You know, because I'm like, this is just not going to work for me. And at one point she said, "This is soothing." And I'm thinking, it's not soothing, you know. I mean, Aerosmith would be soothing, you know what I mean? And so I'm like trying to figure out what we're doing here, and she goes into the kitchen, and I walked in the kitchen, and I said to her, "Excuse me, but do you have any coffee?" She said, "No." I know, you know where I'm going. Tea, Dr. Pepper, chocolate, sugar. I just have sugar in me. You know, I'm alcoholic too, and there's a lot of sugar in alcohol. I'm withdrawing from everything. Just give me something. "Do you have a stash?" Everybody has a stash. She's like, "No, I don't." And then she says something like, I don't even know what this means, but she says very serious, "I'm a vegan vegetarian." And I'm thinking, what is that? Because I don't know. She says, "I don't eat anything that has a mother." And I said, "I don't want to eat your mother. I want some coffee." You know, I'm not sure what you're just saying. And then I thought she explained to me what a vegan was. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if hell was that you had to spend the rest of your life with a vegan? The rest of your life, you know what I mean? For your misbehavior. And I'm like, so I'm trying, you know. And then she's telling me, you know, I have lentils. And I'm thinking, who would eat that? I mean, it just looks bad, you know? So I'm thinking, and she says something that every addict, if you're honest with me, will say the same thing. She says, "How about some water?" And I thought, oh, I can't stomach that. Because I am very discerning on the chlorine and that taste, you know? And she looks at me like, I could down like a bottle of tequila. But water is it just tastes a bit weird, you know? And so she said, "You'll get used to it. You know, I promise." You know, so she's giving me water and lentils and cantaloupe, and she's saying, "We need to get outside and take a hike." And I'm thinking, you could take a hike. You know, I'm just trying to withdraw here. And she just did all of the right things. She loved on me. She would tell me, it's a really silly thing. She'd hold up a walnut. "What does this look like?" And I'm like, "A nut, like you, somewhat." You know, it's like, do you know what I mean? I mean, it's just crazy to say to somebody, look closely. What's it look like? And finally I said, "It looks like a brain, actually." And she said, "And it's good for your brain. If you've got a kidney bean, what would it look like?" Like, kidney. "And it's good for your kidney." Artichoke is good for your liver, you know. And with an addict, I mean, you know, at that time I had hepatitis A, B, and C. I was not doing well. I had all kinds of physical stuff. I'm trying to withdraw from drugs. I have infections that are crazy. Her husband was a dentist and looked at my teeth, the ones that I had left were in bad shape, and you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, I needed all that, and she's just kind of doing all that stuff for me, massaging my feet as she let me talk about just this horrible stuff. You know, I was homeless in Los Angeles for 10 years. There are 80,000 kids homeless in Los Angeles right now. 80,000, with similar stories that I had. I ended up on the streets at 13 years old. I was picked up within 24 hours and pulled into an industry that would make you gag. and I'm telling her all these stories, horrendous things, and she is just looking at me like, man, I just love you. And I wanted to hit her for that, My mom tried to self-abort 6 different times. My mom doesn't even love me. My dad interfered with me the first time I was 3 months old. I don't know what it feels like to be around people that are normal. The addictions that were rampant in our family, we were not good to each other. We were not kind to each other. And she's just looking at me like, I love you. And I'm thinking, stop looking at me like that. I just don't know how to deal with that. And at one point at the end of the day, she said, what's the worst thing that you ever did, Because I think I was just rambling, and I told her about a time that just I was interfered with, and it was very intense. I was, 9 or 10, and I told her the whole story, and she started crying, and when she started crying, I said, what are you crying for? And she said, that wasn't your fault. And I don't know why, but I heard that. Wasn't your fault. If you could choose, and if I could choose whether I had my life or a life where I was loved, man, life where I was loved. I have never had a father. My father never got into recovery, died in a crack house. I never had somebody that I walked in the room and they looked at me like, I am so proud of you. I so adore who you are as a woman, who you're becoming. I see fathers do that, and I want to step in, like, how you photobomb someone? I want to, jump in front of the child and say, can you just say that to me once? You know what I mean? It's like you long for that. You long to have a mom that says, come sit with me, or stresses when things are not going well for you. I never had that. I never had that. The things I had were pretty twisted, and it was just, this woman was just amazing. She's crying, and I'm getting it, and Christians are just hysterical. This moment especially is the funniest moment for most Christians. They realize they got you, that all of a sudden you're loving them back, and they go like this, and the Bible slips right out. And they're in the middle of Bible study, and you think, how did that happen? Where did that come from, So she's teaching me about David and, all that kind of stuff, and man, what a sleazy guy that was. Killing off, having affairs and killing off husbands and, all moving her in and, all of that kind of stuff. I'm thinking, man, that guy was not good. And then she said he went into a depression, realized, I don't know how many men or women realize what you're capable of being at any point in your life. Whether you're in front of a computer and you kind of follow something, or whether you've had an affair, or whether whatever, you realize that you could be that guy, and David realized that he was that guy, and it just killed him. His depression was intense, and then he almost died in that for a year. Literally, he was sick, and he came back to God, and God forgave him. And I listened. I thought, I listened. She told me about the woman caught in adultery, pulled to the feet of Jesus, who she said was God, and he looked right at her and responded to the people in the circle. And he said to the people in the circle, they said, what are you going to do? Well, we're going to stone her to death. And stone her to death, pick up huge boulders and bash her skull in. And I'm like, who would have lived? Raise your hand if you would have survived that day and age. And so it's just crazy, crazy penalty for the sin of, especially our sexual sins and stuff. And so I'm listening, because I'm thinking, I hope she doesn't, I just don't know what she's going to say next. But she says with the group that's in the circle, Jesus bends over and he starts writing in, or kneels down and starts writing in the sand all of their sin. And I would love, one time I asked God to light up the room that's in front of me of anybody that has committed sin. He said the place would be ablaze, And you know what? Everybody looks so normal and so good. You wouldn't think that. But, even that secret stuff that we think about, all of the junk that we kind of jumped in and out of in our lives. But he kneels down and writes that stuff out. He's just writing that stuff out. And he's writing it in the sand. right? And I'm thinking, as an addict in recovery, has been on the streets for 10 years of learning, I survived, and I survived well. Do you know what I mean? I actually, you know, I have done and seen things and all that kind of stuff, and he's writing it in the sand. And this is God, and he never called one person out. He never shamed one person in that circle. He never said out loud one time to anybody in that circle, I know who you are. He never hinted at their sin. And I thought, man, I really can trust a God like that. He's not going to shame me. He's not here to shame me. He's here to rescue me, redeem me, bring me to a place of safety. And I just fell in love with God. And then she said, I'd like to tell you the story about this crazy guy. And he was crazy, you know. And I'm thinking, you know, who was he? And she said he was ugly, foaming at the mouth, cutting on himself with stones, out of control, filled with like 1,000 demons. And she said he was a guy that would like beat people up or not safe with people, all that kind of stuff. And then she said, did I tell you he was ugly? And I thought, you did. Did I tell you he was crazy? You did. And she went on and on and on. And finally she said, he's the guy, he was so bad, they would literally put chains on him, kick him out of town. And I'm thinking the whole time, I want to know what happens to him. Because you know what? If I had my say, because I think I dated that guy. You know what I mean? If I had my say, I want him to be skinned alive. I want body parts removed. I want lightning bolts to come down from heaven, and I want him to slowly just die. You know, I want someone to pay for all of the abuse that I've experienced in my life. Abused kids can be picked out by abusers in 5 to 7 seconds. Are you kidding me? So all of the stuff I went through with my dad, I'm telling you, that was not the only person, and I was picked out within seconds. Every time I went into a school, every time I walked down the street, every time we moved into another house. And I mean, it's just crazy what you go through when you are an abused, neglected kid. And so I'm thinking, I want to hear the end of that story. Because I really want it to be good. I really want, for the first time, you know, she said that Jesus was God and they spoke the world into existence. Maybe he can speak and this guy could fall apart cell by cell. How fun would that be? You know, so I'm just ready. So she said, did I tell you he was ugly? And I said, just tell me the end of the story. And then Jesus walks up, all the disciples leave, he freaks them out because the guy's so crazy. And so they run, Christ just stands there. And this guy comes up to Christ, crazy, just out of his mind. And he cusses him out. And I'm like, really? This is God. And you're not even smart enough right now to not say a word. You know, and I'm like just wanting to crack up, you know, because I know the next thing is going to be brilliant, you know, because, you know, it's God. And I'm thinking, have anybody been in a car where you've got tons of drugs, everybody's high, and you get pulled over by the cops? Just raise your hand. No. Yeah, I had a couple hands. I love that. So anyhow, so I've had that happen, and the driver, higher than a kite, turns around to the cop and says, what'd you pull me over for? And you want to just say, for the first time in your life, can you just be quiet? Right now. Maybe never again. Can you just say, yes, officer? Can you just be polite? Because we're all going to prison if you say the next word. So I know that guy. And he's, you know, this guy is cussing Jesus out, and he's just out of control. And so I'm ready. I'm ready for the big thing. I'm ready for the judgment. I'm ready for him to pay. I'm ready for all that kind of stuff. And she says, Jesus pulls out every single demon, every single addiction, cleans him up, walks him to this water himself and washes him, clothes him. For the first time ever, he's in his right mind, and he's just sitting there. And I thought, you know what? That is not how I wanted this to end. I'm so mad now. I'm like, you know, what happened? I didn't even hear him beg for forgiveness. I didn't even hear him say, you know, I'm so sorry for the things I've done. I didn't hear any of that. I'm just thinking, this is so not right. And she said, what most people don't know is he couldn't even speak because of the addictions. He couldn't even talk through all of these demons. He couldn't, on his own, say a word. Yet in his heart, there was a small cry that said, please don't leave me like this. Amen. And Jesus responded to that and changed everything in his life. And I was won over. I was won over. I thought, you know what? I do not care what happens at this point on. I will forever follow God. Forever. I couldn't survive, really. The next few years of my life was really tough. I came into a really very, very, has anybody been to a very, 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 very conservative church? So I came into a very, 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 very conservative church. I had a skirt on that was about this short, tight top. I put every piece of jewelry I owned because I wanted to impress everyone. I brought pork roast to potluck because they said that, you bring your own food. I felt like Martha Stewart. I mean, I'd never cooked anything in my life, and this turned out brilliant. Put it right in the middle of the table, And I'm just like, woohoo! I just met God, and it's been amazing. And he said, we're family. Hey, and people are like, oh man, And I was smoking about 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and I ended up sitting next to a vegan who was allergic to the entire planet, and I didn't know that, you know who I'm talking about. And so I sat next to them, and their throats closing off and all that kind of stuff. And so I didn't want to offend them the next time, so I just sprayed perfume all over so that they didn't smell the smoke, which didn't help her, And so and there was nothing that I did. I remember, can somebody hand me a Bible? I remember the first time, and you just got to picture this. I'm illiterate, functionally illiterate, probably 2nd or 3rd grade level, and they put me in a class. Do you know what class they put me in? 2,300 days, time prophecies. I was sitting there, I can't read, so I don't know anything, and they say, we're going to start going, let's just go to Revelations. And I thought, okay, I'm ready. And they said, no, Revelations. And I said, no, ready. Really, we're starting with Revelations. And so I said, you say that again, I'm going to hit you right in the face. I said, I'm ready. Do you know what I mean? And I'm trying to be nice. I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I'm thinking, it's not going to be safe if you say that to me one more time. And so I'm really smart, and I think maybe I'm in the wrong place. So I think, okay, go ahead. I said, Revelations. And I'm thinking, just do it. Just do it. Don't even say anything again. And I remember thinking, I don't know what you're saying. Atonement and Revelations and 2,300 days, and I can't hardly read, and I'm going to die here. And I'd go home and I'd cry to God. I'd just cry, and I don't get it. And what's really fun about God is he would just in a second would just say, there it is. Really? Thank you. I got the Day of Atonement in less than a couple seconds. And I'm thinking, I couldn't believe that we have a God in heaven, not only cares about my recovery, not only cares about my healing, not only cares that I need to know that I am loved in a way that's unbelievable, that he has a plan for my life, there's a journey that's involved. But if you're hurting like a good father, let me tell you about that. It's no big deal. Don't let that stuff scare you. And I'm like, how cool is he? I remember I was so in love that I wanted to just be baptized. And in this did I say conservative? They said, well, I'm not sure you're ready. And I remember, I remember thinking, the pastor was this little guy, right? I could run right past you and jump in that water before you could stop me. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm just being polite by asking you. Because, that really wasn't a question. I'm getting in the water, And so, but, a little while into that, things got intense, and I decided to leave, and I left, and I tried to be, I went to a really wild church after that. Wild. And it was really fun. I was really good at wild churches. They stood up on chairs, rolled in aisles, they had little waving things, and I'm like, I love this, But, when I did, by this time I'm learning to read. I actually went back and got a GED. I ended up going to college. I wanted to get a nursing degree and, got into nursing. And I was just having a great time working with gang members and drug addicts. And I got awards by the mayor of the town I was in for the work we did with gang members. Because you know what? The only thing I knew for sure is God heals. Man, I knew that. If somebody came in, they could be so twisted, and I would think, you know what, God, untwist. Everything that we have cultivated, everything that we have done in our life, every place that we've gone, that we're there in so much fear. When we look at the world with such scarcity that I think I have to grab everything else, I'm going to lose it. God says, let me take care of all of that, because you'll come to a place where you could just be at peace. And you'll be blessed because it's yours. When you inhale the air around you, it's yours to inhale. Nobody's going to take it from you. I used to eat with my hand around my plate, just in case. And God said, you could take your hand away. Nobody's going to take your food. You know what I mean? It's like all that kind of stuff. And so, doing, that whole kind of time from you is just amazing. But what I found out when I went to a lot of different places is that I always wanted to come back to this really conservative place, because they had this little walnut that looked like a brain. You know what I mean? They gave me water instead of coffee. I mean, there was something so true about where I was sitting that I missed it. I missed you guys, And during the meantime, a friend of mine, and this is just the funniest thing, but a friend of mine was doing some fundraising at the Philharmonic, and she said, Cheri, do you want to go to a concert? And do they let heroin addicts in recovery go to symphony concerts? You know what I mean? For some reason, it was just it was so interesting or huge that I thought, I don't know if they let us. Would an alarm go off when I go through the door? Nah, she's just not, And she said, stop, that's ridiculous. And so at one point she said, let's just go. It'd be fun. I got tickets. And I thought, okay. And she got the tickets, and I got a gown. I looked hot. No, beautiful. Sorry, beautiful. So I just looked beautiful, and I just hadn't looked like that before, and I felt just amazing, and it was just so fun and so cool. And she said, you have to be on time because it's not like a rock concert. You can't just show up. You have to be there, before the music starts and all that stuff. And so she's late. I'm thinking, I'm on time. You're late. What's up with that? I'm waiting. And she finally shows up, and she feels terrible about being late. And she, drives fast. She's going to the concert hall. We get there. And instead of going through, has anybody been to a symphony concert? So instead of going through the box office, we're going to sneak through the backstage entrance. And she says, we already got our tickets. I think this will be all right. And I'm thinking, I have not been arrested in a long time. I just don't want to be arrested breaking into the symphony. I don't want to be all of a sudden, it just seemed like it was so wrong. And so she says, no, I think it'd be okay. And for addicts, I think it'd be okay is not enough for us. It's either okay or it's not okay. We need clear boundaries, And so she said, no, it'd be good. So we come in the backstage entrance, and these two guys stop us. And they say, excuse me, what are you doing back here? And I'm thinking, exactly. And I'm wanting to look at her like, I can't believe you did this to me. Because I looked beautiful and gorgeous, and we just need to be sitting down and listening to good music, and it shouldn't end this way. And one of the guys says, you shouldn't be back here. We put all our instruments here. We'd leave our stuff here. We go up on the platform. It's just not a place to kind of just come through. And I said, exactly. And she said, the only card that she knew to pull, she said, you know what? She has never been to a concert before. and they just look sad. Like I was a foster kid or something. Like, you've never what? You've never been to the Philharmonic? And one of the guys said that tonight's performance is just amazing. Told me about the composer. Even said it's going to start out with a French horn. And it's just an amazing thing. And he kind of sang the melody. And he said the violins are going to answer. Then it goes to the woodwinds. And no, just talks about this piece. And this line will be repeated in every movement. And this is what this guy meant by that. And I'm just like, I didn't know there was a way to listen to music. But, it was so amazing. Then he says, can I take you guys to your seats? And I said, yeah. And so he walks us to the seats. And at one point he says, afterwards, it's the trombone player's birthday. Would you guys want to come to the party? Remember I said I looked... Yeah. And so I'm thinking, but at that moment, I'm thinking, oh, I should have a hat that says drama. I don't do relationships well. I'm a mess. My family, I'll eat you alive. You just look so normal. There's, and I wanted to have a T-shirt or a hat or some kind of warning thing that goes off when somebody gives you that look, because they don't know. Raise your hand if you have a little drama in you. And I'm thinking, I just have to have that sign. And my friend says yes before I could even think of that, and I'm thinking, oh, And so we get afterwards, the concert was amazing, and afterwards we go over to the party, and it was at this Hyatt Regency, and now the symphony players are sitting in with the jazz band, and everybody is kind of having this birthday party, and I look up, and the trumpet player's up on the stage, and he's playing, and he's so good. And I think, you are so good. He was good at the classical stuff, but he's really good at this. And I looked up, and he's giving me the eye. And I'm like, oh, where's that hat? Where's that? Like, I should have a little warning sign, little flashing lights, drama. And so when he's done, he comes down, and he says, would you dance with me? And I said, no. No, come on. So we danced, and he's in a tux, and I'm in a gown. We're waltzing around the room. Stars, I think, were in the air. It's one of those moments. And finally, I thought, this is crazy. And I sat down, and he comes over, and he said, who are you? Like, where have you been my whole life? And I thought, you know what? I haven't told a lot of people. And I don't need to now. I'm working in the hospital. I've got all these awards. I've so far removed from that life and my addictions. And so finally I just said, I'm a heroin addict in recovery. I was homeless for 10 years. My dad died in a crack house. My grandparents are addicts. My sister has a porn site on the internet. My other sister makes pee or methamphetamine out of my mom's house and deals. She's a cook. I don't know, this is who I am. And pretty soon, he couldn't stand it. He just started busting up, just started laughing. And I said, who are you? So I was a Boy Scout till I was 18. And I thought, oh, how cute is that, So I was a Boy Scout till I was 18. My dad's an ambassador for the United States to Bangladesh. I thought, an ambassador? My mom's a violinist. I've been in orchestra since I was 14 years old. I teach at the university. And so I couldn't stand it. I am laughing so hard I can't even breathe. And he's laughing. So I said to him, so you're kind of a geek. And he said, you're homeless. It's just like, I don't know. Is that like the pot calling the kettle? What is that? And we just could not believe. We laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And finally at one point, he says to me that... we'll never date. That's really obvious, but I'd like to see you again. And he played golf, and I played tennis, and so I taught him tennis, and he taught me golf, and everything was going well. Any golfers in the group? No golfers in the group. It's a fun sport. He said, you taught me how to swing, put the ball down, I want you to hit it up in the air and over to that hole. I swung, put the ball down, hit it up in the air, and it almost went in that hole. And he's like, I love you. You know, it's like golfers they're really taken by that stuff, you know. And one day he comes over and he gives me a gift, and the gift was beautiful, and I just like opened it, and it's a pair of golf shoes. And for a golfer, that's like an engagement ring. Do you know what I mean? They're serious. They don't mess with the other stuff. But you know what I mean? I'm thinking, this is serious. And so I said to him, I want you to meet my family. And he said, well, how bad could they be? You know? How bad could that be? And raise your hand if when you bring someone over, you want to call ahead of time and say, can you be normal for like just the first 15, 20 minutes? At least, just and my family thinks they are normal. You know, I mean, it's just crazy. And so I said, I'm bringing someone home, and I think I love them, and I want them to meet everybody. And so I'm going to bring them home for Christmas. Holidays is the worst time to bring people home into my family, but I'm going to bring them home for Christmas. And they said, what does he do? I don't want to say. I don't want to say. And they're saying, no, what does he do? And I'm thinking, I don't want to say. I know you're going to make fun of him. No, what does he do? And finally I said, he's a classical musician. After they stop laughing, I'm thinking, you're a drug dealer. Stop. And so they're just laughing and laughing. And I could get it, because one time Brad and I were doing something, and he said, I've always wanted to be a singer. And I said, a singer? Yeah. And I said, sing something for me. And he broke out into this opera piece that didn't stop. And I thought, don't ever do that in front of my friends. You know what I mean? Definitely not in front of my family. So I can kind of get what they were coming. Anyhow, so we get there Christmas Eve, and we just go to bed. We get up the next morning, Christmas Day. My dad is sitting at the table in the kitchen, smoking a joint. Says to Brad, you want some of this? And Brad says something really adorable, like, is that legal? And now my dad is offended, like, who is this, And so now they're, it's really interesting. Raise your hand if you know I'm telling the truth on this. If you have a lot of drugs and everybody's using, but somebody is choosing not to, then everybody goes to the garage. The only person in the house is the person that's clean, And everybody that comes has said, like, got a new transmission, want to check it out? And they don't know anything about cars. But anyhow, so now everybody's in the garage, but Brad and I. Brad asked for breakfast at one point, just as anybody eating breakfast. And my family is so like, what do you mean breakfast? It's like a holiday, And it's just a crazy thing. My sister shows up. My sister just got her, can I say she just got her breast done? Is that legal in church? Okay. And she wanted people to feel them, because they were natural, unbelievably natural. And so Brad is like, Brad cannot, he just can't do anything, And the higher people get, my younger sister shows up. She's a pee addict, and she's like, come and give me a hug, because Cherise told me all about you. It is amazing. I think she's enough. Come on, hug me. And Brad's like, and he just can't, So then he hugs her. She's so skinny. Her teeth are all rotted out. She's got crank sores, which are open wounds on her face. She picks all the time. Her hair's falling out in patches. She's got aplastic anemia. She can't produce iron at all. She is pale. And he's just wanting to cry. He wants to hold her until maybe he can hold some health back into her. And he's just, she's off doing something else and being something else. And my brother shows up, who's alcoholic. And finally we're opening up Christmas presents. And my sister gives us a present. And she's like, I couldn't wait to give you this. And then we realize now we have stolen goods on our lap. And his dad's an ambassador. And right after that, what was really interesting is right after that, we're on our way home. And I knew he was just going to tell me, I'm sorry, we can't do this. And on the way home, he just said, are you sure you weren't adopted? And he asked me to marry him. That was 26 years ago. And the reason I want to tell you all that is I was hopeless my entire life until I met God. hopeless. I had nothing to offer, nothing to give, no skills, no anything. I mean, I had no claim on anything, and God said that didn't matter to him. He absolutely was crazy about me, and if I trusted him, he would do every single thing I needed, including introduce me to the man that I will love the rest of my life. We had a daughter who never has used a drug in her life. The only sadness in her life, I think, is she really wanted a normal mom, and I don't know how to do that. You know, I love her, and she knows that, and she delights in that, but I mean, she wanted to talk about normal things, like, you know, Mom, I think he tried to hold my hand today, touch my finger, and I'm like, what? I don't even get that, you know. So, you know, but, you know, I really believe, and the Bible says in Jeremiah, that I have a future and a plan for you, to not cause you evil or harm, but to prosper you and all that kind of stuff. And every single thing that I needed, every single thing that I dreamt of my whole life, not even realizing I dreamt of it my whole life, I had a God that took care of all of those things in the right timing. My recovery was tough. The day-to-day stuff was tough. Understanding who I am and allowing him to untwist that stuff was tough. But man, I can't even tell you how good it feels like to be in my own skin. I can't even tell you how good it is to be married to a Boy Scout. You know, I can't even tell you how good it feels to know that I have a Father in heaven that has a plan for me. So if you're an addict in this room, if you came looking for something, they're going to start a group here called Celebrating Life and Recovery. It's from a television show that I do, and it's a recovery program based around that. Please join them. If you are a church member, don't judge somebody along the journey. Because, man, God is just, every single thing he does changes us a bit. Do you know that I'm a health nut now? If you came over to my house, you wouldn't find soda, Dr. Pepper, chocolate, definitely coffee. Could you imagine me on coffee? It's like frightening. But I am a health nut, and I love God, and I love the fact that he's so faithful. I still struggle with stuff, but he's always faithful. And you know, I want to close with that. Just know, if you are in a church and don't relate to what I said, just make the building safer, because we're going to come in, and we need to find a place to sit down. Don't put us in 2,300 days, and make sure you have class-appropriate stuff where we could talk about our stuff as we heal. If you have compassion or the ability to sit in the darkness with somebody without slamming on all the lights, because you've worked through your own issues, you've been in darkness yourself, and it doesn't scare you, to kind of sit there for a minute, do that for someone, and then slowly bring them into the light. And I just pray if you can do that kind of stuff, bless you. If you've been a perpetrator or an addict, or you're unsafe in every way, there's a God in heaven that can untwist you. And he knows the desires of your heart. He knows how to get you to the next place. We're going to end right now, and I want you to know that we're going to stay around and just, if you want prayer, if you want to hang out, raise your hand if you just want someone to pray for you before you go today. Couple people. So we're going to do that. And so I'm going to go ahead. Do I just close in prayer, General? After? I just get off? I'm getting, okay. All right, bye.